The Beatles, consisting of John Lennon, Paul McCartney, George Harrison and Ringo Starr, first came together in Liverpool, England in 1960. The band's earliest incarnation included Stuart Sutcliffe on bass and Pete Best on drums, but by 1962 the band's definitive lineup was in place with the exit of Sutcliffe and replacement of Best by Ringo Starr. Their first two albums, Please Please Me and With the Beatles, both released in 1963, were predominantly filled with their versions of R&B standards alongside their original material. Their fresh sound and unique compositions quickly caught the public's attention, culminating in what became known as Beatlemania, a term first used that same year to describe the intense fan frenzy directed towards the group. The Beatles embarked on their first full UK tour in 1963, and by early 1964, they had their first #1 hit in the US with I Want to Hold Your Hand, a success that paved the way for their maiden American visit. This period was marked by the historic Ed Sullivan Show performance, where they captivated a record-breaking television audience. Their first film, A Hard Day's Night, was released in 1964 to critical acclaim, marking another milestone in their career. The soundtrack, notably featuring all original songs, became their third studio album. Following the successful US tour, the Beatles embarked on their world tour in 1964, and by 1965, they performed a record-breaking concert at New York's Shea Stadium, establishing the precedent for stadium rock concerts. This same year saw the release of their innovative album, Rubber Soul, showcasing a move towards more complex lyricism and musical arrangements. Revolver, released in 1966, marked a significant shift in the Beatles' sound with the use of orchestral arrangements and studio experimentation. Around this time, the band decided to stop touring due to the growing physical dangers and the inability to reproduce their increasingly sophisticated studio sound live. They began to explore psychedelic influences with the release of Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band in 1967, considered one of the most influential albums in the history of popular music. That same year, they released Magical Mystery Tour, originally the soundtrack to their self-produced TV film. In 1968, they released The White Album, a double album with diverse styles reflecting the members' individual tastes. This was followed by Yellow Submarine in early 1969, a soundtrack to the animated film of the same name. Abbey Road, released in 1969, despite being recorded after much of Let It Be, was the last album they recorded together as a band. Let It Be, although recorded in early 1969, was finally released in 1970, following extensive post-production by Phil Spector. Internal tensions, business disagreements, and the members' evolving personal and creative interests led to the Beatles' breakup in 1970, marking the end of an era. Despite their split, the Beatles' legacy has remained impactful, their music resonating with every subsequent generation and influencing countless musicians and bands worldwide.